So lately, I haven't been able to go to the theaters as much, mainly for a few different reasons. I was sick with COVID for about a week, and then also the hurricane just happened, so I've only got to go to the theaters a couple times during the weekend of last week, and I got to see a few movies, but I have been at home watching some movies that I have missed at the theater and just got around to, some movies that have came on streaming that I finally checked out. So I've watched quite a bit of stuff, so I wanted to do a review roundup. But before we get into that, if you're new to the channel, definitely hit that like button, the subscribe button if you're new, and also let me know if you've seen any of these movies. So let's not waste any time, let's get into all the movies that I've recently checked out. So the first movie that I checked out is a film called National Anthem. Now this film was supposed to come out in theaters in July. It was limited release. We never got it in theaters, so I just went ahead and waited for it to come on VOD. And it's about a 21-year-old construction worker in rural New Mexico who joins a community of queer ranchers and rodeo performers in search of their own version of the American dream. It stars Charlie Plummer, Eve Lindley, Renee Rosado, and Mason Alexander Park, and was directed by Luke Gilford, and he has never done a film before. Now, what did I actually think about this film? Well, I really did like the cinematography. It was very good. I'm not sure exactly where it was shot, but you have like all the different desert shots, and learning about Charlie Plummer's character. His mom is a drunk, and she really doesn't take care of the family. She doesn't have a job. He has a brother, so he is the breadwinner of the family. He was a construction worker, and then he starts to do things on a ranch in which he meets these different people, and he starts to have feelings for this one girl who actually has a boyfriend, but then there's some other things going on as well. He meets these different queer people that they have all these different things going on with them. There's a rodeo thing that's going on, and he's really just trying to figure out what he's going to do with his life because he's been so cooped up and actually working all the time and never has any fun for himself. And you really see this because the mother actually gets mad at him when he wants to go out and actually have fun with these people and just kind of have a carefree life. And it's mainly a coming of age story. If you like a story like this, I would definitely recommend it. I did have a good time with this movie. I would give it a score of 3.5 out of 5. The only thing I will say is there's certain parts in here where it is a little bit slower. And then of course, obviously, if you're not really into maybe an artsy kind of film, it may be not your kind of thing, but I thought it was shot beautifully. And I thought overall the acting performances and overall, I think it was a good enough movie. I don't know if it's a movie that I would watch multiple times, but I did enjoy it for what it was. Second movie that I watched was You Gotta Believe. This is a sports movie, and it's basically about a bad baseball team who ends up making a Cinderella run and makes it to the World Series in 2002. It's based on a true story. It stars Luke Wilson, Greg Kinnear, Sarah Gadon, Molly Parker, and Patrick Renna, and it was directed by Ty Roberts, and he's done one other film I've seen before called 12 Mighty Orphans. Now with this film, you pretty much know what to expect. It's a bad baseball team. There's some baseball action. If you like baseball, you'll probably enjoy this film. You know exactly what's going to happen beat for beat. The only difference here is you have Luke Wilson who ends up coming down with cancer, which again, as I said, this is based on a true story. So it has some sentimental moments. I thought it was going to be a very preachy film, because that's kind of the vibe I got from the trailer, but it actually was not a preachy film. It has a good little message. Patrick Renna, I know him obviously from the Sandlot movies. He also played Larry the goalie in Big Green, so it's great to see him on screen. Overall, it's pretty much exactly what you would expect from a baseball movie. I didn't think it was an amazing movie by any means. There's definitely better baseball movies that I enjoy a little bit more, but overall, I would give it a score of 3 out of 5. I think overall, if you like these kinds of movies, you know what to expect, and you know exactly what you're getting into. So it's exactly what the trailer is basically. The next movie that I checked out was The Crow, the remake. I've heard a lot of bad things about this movie going into it, so I didn't really have high expectations. I have no connections to the original movie whatsoever, so I went into this movie pretty blind. I would say the trailers didn't really impress me whatsoever. You have Bill Skarsgård here, and FKA Twigs. It was directed by Rupert Sanders, who he's done the Snow White and the Huntsman movie and also Ghost in the Shell, which I really don't care for those movies overall. And it's basically about Eric and Shelley, who are brutally murdered when the demons of her dark past catch up with them. Given the chance to save his true love by sacrificing himself, Eric sets out to seek merciless revenge on their killers, traversing the worlds of the living and the dead to put the wrong things right. Now I'll say this and start off by saying I don't think this movie was shot that bad. I love the gothic tones to it. I think the dark nature of it is really good. I actually do like some of the cinematography. I think like the biggest problem with this movie overall, and a lot what I've heard from everybody else, is the love story itself. So Bill Skarsgård and FKA Twigs, their love story is very much rushed. They're in this rehab center. Within 10 minutes, they've met each other. They're in love. And about an hour of this movie is really about their love story, in which then obviously they're killed. And then you have obviously Bill Skarsgård going back and obviously trying to make things right. The action scenes in here, I don't think are done that bad, but there's not a lot of them, and I think that's kind of what makes the movie feel like it's kind of boring to others. I really did like the aesthetic, and I think that's what really kept me interested in the movie. I think the acting was okay. I don't think it was horrible. I think the villain is very much underutilized, though I do think that he has some cool powers. The final fight scene with him and Bill Skarsgård is pretty weak and just kind of glossed over really quickly, which I wasn't that much of a fan of. I think overall for me, this is a movie where I could say it's okay. So I would give it a 2.5 out of 5. Nothing great, not the worst movie I've seen this year. I've seen much worse movies. I wasn't necessarily bored with this movie, but I can see where people would be bored with this movie because overall, as far as like the action being promised within the trailer, a lot of it is in the second half of the movie and it's pretty brief. So it's just not as much entertaining as you would think it would be, and just a love story, it's kind of dull. The fourth movie that I checked out was Fly Me to the Moon, which was the rom-com film with Channing Tatum, Scarlett Johansson, Ray Romano, and Woody Harrelson, and was directed by Greg Berlanti. And he's in one other film that I've seen, Life as We Know It, which I did like that film. This film was about sparks flying in all directions as marketing maven Kelly Jones, brought in to fix NASA's public image, wreaks havoc on Apollo 11 launch director Cole Davis' already difficult task of putting a man on the moon. When the White House deems the mission too important to fail, Jones is directed to stage a fake moon landing as backup, and the countdown truly begins. I did like the fact that this was filmed, I believe, in NASA. I believe in Cape Canaveral, which I've actually been there. I did notice some certain little shots in that area, which was really cool to actually see. But the comedy here did not land whatsoever. I did not laugh during this film. The romance portion between Scarlett Johansson and Channing Tatum, I really didn't buy. I thought the movie was pretty boring. It was over 2 hours, which was way too long, and I really wasn't really interested in the premise itself. I like sci-fi movies, so I thought this would have a little bit of a sci-fi edge to it. There's not really much to it. It just didn't really do it for me, so I can really only say of giving this a 2 out of 5 because it just was really a hard time for me to actually get through this, and I'm glad I didn't sit in a theater watching this because it just didn't really intrigue me. Next up, I saw the thriller horror movie Subservience with Megan Fox, which was directed by S.K. Dale, which he has done in one other film I've seen before, Till Death, which I actually did like. And going into this movie, I saw a lot of bad reviews, a lot of hate on Megan Fox. People always hate her acting. I'm not sure why. I mean, I can give you guys a ton of films that I've watched where acting is just completely horrible and unbearable to watch, but I don't think she's a bad actress. I mean, she's not always in the best of movies, and I actually didn't think this movie was that bad. So the premise of this one was, with his wife out sick, a struggling father brings home a lifelike AI only to have his self-aware new help want everything her new family has to offer, like the affection of her owner, and she'll kill to get it. Yeah, I mean, you've seen a lot of things lately with like AI and certain things of where they can take over, and it doesn't really add anything, I would say, too new to what you've seen before, but I thought this was a lot better than the movie Afraid that I watched in theaters. I thought Megan Fox did a great job in the acting here. I'm not saying it was top notch where she should get an Oscar or anything, but I think that S.K. Dale really knows how to get the best out of her and really know exactly where to put her as far as like direction and where she should actually go. As far as the script, I mean, it's pretty basic. You pretty much just have her as this AI bot that's helping out the family, and eventually she pretty much is trying to take over and obviously just really destroy this family, and that's just kind of the dangers of AI. You do see a few little points in which like AI is taking over the workplace, which I really personally believe that that's going to be something that really happens later on in the future. You already see like outsourcing with companies, so I really think that that's a good point in which that could actually really take over in the workplace. So I think there's some good points in here. Cinematography wasn't too bad, music wasn't too bad, overall story wasn't too bad. I was entertained mostly. I would say like the third act maybe gets a little bit far-fetched a little bit, and you kind of knew it was going to go that direction. I wouldn't say that I would probably rush to rewatch it again, but I think overall for a one-time watch and watching it at home, a 3 out of 5 is just right for this film. I caught up on a few streaming releases. I saw Space Cadet on Amazon Prime starring Emma Roberts, Poppy Liu, Tom Hopper, and Gabrielle Union. And basically this is about a character named Rex who applies at NASA to obviously go to space. She goes through their training program, she fakes her credentials, and she gets into this program. And there's a lot of bad reviews for this, so I didn't have any expectations going into this, but I will say this, if you do watch this movie, think of like the Disney Channel original movies that were released back when we were kids, like back in like the early 2000s. That's exactly what this movie reminded me of, a very far-fetched story that would never happen. I mean, come on. Emma Roberts' character, I could definitely see where people would feel she's a little bit too quirky, kind of annoying at times. I did laugh at certain portions of this film. I mean, I think I laughed more so at like the stupidity of the script overall. I mean, it's just really stupid. I mean, obviously, like this would never happen, and the fact of just of how she really bonds with these space cadets or people that she apparently would obviously go to space with, it just didn't seem like it would actually work overall. And you would think that the teachers and everybody really involved with NASA would really pick up on that, which obviously they eventually do. And just the ending and certain things that really play out in the third act and just the comedy overall. I mean, like in the beginning of the film I was laughing, but as the film kind of goes along, it's kind of stupid. I mean, I didn't really hate the film overall just because I was thinking in the back of my head, yeah, this feels more like a Disney Channel original movie type deal. So I kind of gave it a little bit of leadway, but I would give it a 2 out of 5. It wasn't all that great, honestly, but I didn't completely hate it, but I definitely wouldn't watch it again. Continuing with Amazon Prime, I caught the new film Killer Heat that just came out this week. It stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Shailene Woodley, and Richard Madden, and was directed by Philippe Lecoit. I've never seen any of his previous works, and it's basically about a private investigator who is hired by Shailene Woodley to investigate a suspicious death, and there's some jealousy amongst the family. So I've seen a lot of bad reviews also for this. I've seen a lot of 1.5s. And I'll say this movie is not amazing by any means. It's a slow burn mystery film, and a lot of the clues that are actually introduced in the movie, it's pretty easy to kind of figure out what is going to play out, but it's like a waiting game in which you're waiting for this to actually play out. I don't know if people are expecting a lot of action with this film. There's really only one action scene. There's like a shootout scene in which is pretty brief. But other than that, it's mainly just kind of figuring out the clues amongst the family and just obviously the private investigator. We get a little bit of backstory with him and his wife, and then Shailene Woodley, her backstory as well with these twin brothers. That's really kind of like the basis of the movie. The cinematography is great. I believe they filmed this in Greece. I could be wrong, but it is very good. There's a lot of good shots in here. I think the music flowed well here. And the story, it doesn't have a ton to offer, I would say. So I think that's where like the bad reviews come in. But again, with this being a streaming movie, not expecting a whole lot, I didn't think it was all that bad. I've definitely watched a lot worse films this year. I don't think this movie is a 1 star out of 5. I would give it a 3 out of 5. I think overall I enjoyed it for what it was, and the fact that it was a slow burn, and obviously kind of knowing and being very predictable as to actually what was going to happen, because there's not a lot of characters to really know exactly what happened in the death that actually occurs. So that was really easy to figure out. So knock off a few points there, but I think overall I enjoyed it for what it was, and it's a one-time watch. I like Shailene Woodley, so I guess I'm a little bit biased there. I like to actually see her in this role, and just the ending of this film and just some of the secrets that come out, I didn't mind it, and I think overall it was entertaining enough for me, but I can see where this wouldn't be entertaining for everybody, so I would give this one a 3 out of 5. And the last movie that I caught was Amber Alert, that just came to VOD this week. It was directed by Carrie Bellessa, which she also did The original, which I think was back in 2021, which I did not see, so I can't compare, it stars Hayden Panettiere and Tyler James Williams. I didn't recognize him at first, but he actually was in a kid's film that I watched back when I was a little kid called Unaccompanied Minor, so him in adult form now, so that was cool to see him. Hayden Panettiere, I never see her in any movies really ever, just a few movies I've seen her in, so it's cool to see her on screen. And basically this movie is about these two. You have Hayden Panettiere, who is going to get a ride, basically like an Uber type ride. She needs to get somewhere, and they actually see that there is an Amber Alert. There is this mom that loses her daughter. She gets kidnapped, and there's a description of this car that is going around town. Exactly what the description is, they see it on the video boards as they're driving, and they come across this car and they follow this car, and they're basically on this cat and mouse chase throughout this entirety of this movie, in which there is some decent action involved, and there is a third act that is very interesting. I would say it's intense at times. I wouldn't say it's all the way action all the time. You learn a little bit about the characters in between, and then you have like the call center as well with a cop and also a woman that obviously is fielding all these calls, because when they actually release the Amber Alert, all these people are actually calling in and trying to track down this actual car that is driving around with this girl in the back of it. I would say it's mildly entertaining. It has its moments. It's not an amazing movie. I think it's exactly what you would expect. It's been done better, I would say. There's definitely other movies that definitely have a lot more action and just have done this subject maybe a little bit better with kidnapping. So I think overall for me, this one is just okay. I wouldn't say you have to rush to watch it, but I think it's a decent watch. So I would give it a 2.5 out of 5. So those are all the movies that I have watched lately. Have you guys checked out any of these, or do you want to check out any of these? And if you have, leave any comments down below and let me know what you thought about some of these movies. And if you haven't seen them, definitely let me know if you want to watch any of them. Thank you guys for watching as always, and I will see you guys next time.